rest assured, because tonight we will be doing Catan Cities and Nights expansion. I'll be going down. I'll be going over all of the new additions that Cities and Nights brings to the base game of Catan, as well as all the rules that come with the game, and a couple basic starter tips and tricks for you, so that you don't get absolutely annihilated in your first game playing this expansion. So, without further ado, let us jump right into Catan Cities and Nights. So, first up, we have to address the changes that this game makes from the base game. So, and in order to play Catan Cities and Nights, because it is an expansion pack, you're going to need the base game first. That is how it works. It comes with a lot of pieces, but these pieces they work in unison with the original game. So you can't buy the expansion without having the original game first. So just as a warning, in case you think this comes with everything. But yeah, if you own the original game and you want to play the Cities and Nights expansion, there are a few components of the original game that you need to hold out because they're not used in the expansion. These pieces are the development cards, the building cost cards, and the largest army card. As you can probably tell from the name of the game, Catan Cities and Nights brings a lot of changes specifically to the cities and the night elements of the game. So that's why you have a couple pieces that won't be used in the expansion. So instead of these three components, the new expansion adds progress cards, nights, city calendars, city walls, event dies, commodity cards, metropolises, and the merchant. So first up, let us jump into what are these new commodity cards. So in the base game of Catan, you have resources. You place your settlements and you place your cities on the tiles, and based on the tiles that they're next to, not on the tiles, but on the intersections of tiles, and based on what it's next to, you get to collect resources based on the dice rolls. Now, usually in the base game of Catan, once you upgrade to a city, you collect 2 resources for everything that you're next to instead of 1, and that changes in Catan Cities and Nights. So now, if you have a city and it is built next to a pasture, which is where you get wool, instead of collecting 2 wool or 2 sheep, as my friends and I say, you now get to collect 1 sheep and 1 cloth. Cloth is the new commodity card. And then the same goes for the mountain hex. If you have a city that is built next to the mountain terrain, instead of collecting 2 ore cards, you now collect 1 ore and 1 coin commodity. And finally, if you have a city built next to the tree or lumber hex, instead of collecting 2 wood, you collect 1 wood and 1 paper. So those are the 3 new commodity cards that have been added to the game: paper, coin, and cloth. Now, you might be asking yourself, what can I do with these new commodity cards? Well, you can use commodities to improve your cities using the new city calendar. So the city calendar is the new flip book that replaces the building block card from the base game of Catan. It has all the recipes listed for the buildable items you can craft in Cities and Nights, as well as these pages that you can flip to keep track of what level of city improvement you're on. So basically, as you collect your commodity cards, on your turn you'll be able to pay them to the bank and improve your city improvement level. And each one is correlated to a different segment of the city calendar. The city calendar has 3 components to it, and that is correlated with the 3 types of commodities. So using cloth, you can upgrade your trade city calendar, which is the leftmost one, and it is marked in yellow science, which is on the right side, and it is green. So each area of the city calendar has 5 levels to it, and each level costs an extra commodity to upgrade to. So what I mean by that is, on the first level, it only costs 1 commodity. So if I want to get a level 1 city improvement, it will cost me 1 cloth to upgrade trade. But then after that, the next improvement will now cost 2 cloth. And then after that, 3 and 4. And finally, it maxes out at 5 cloth. And that is the absolute maximum you can get in one of these areas. So upgrading your city calendar is very important to the game because it can bring you 3 different kinds of benefits. So I will go over each of these benefits one by one because they're all beneficial in different ways. So, number 1, upgrading your city calendar improves your chances of collecting progress cards. So as I mentioned at the beginning, the Cities and Knights expansion no longer uses development cards. Development cards was this deck in the base game of Catan that you were able to purchase using a grain and a sheep. So it does away with all of that, and instead progress cards are collected by upgrading your city calendar and unlocking dice roll combinations that allow you to collect. So basically, you have your original 2 die from the base game of Catan, but the Cities and Knights will add a 3rd die that you roll on your turn, and 3 of the sides of the event die are like demarcated with a different color of castle or metropolis, you could say. And so if you roll let's say you have a level 1 city improvement on trade, then at the very top of your city calendar you will see the combinations you need in order to be able to collect a progress card. So for city improvement 1 on cloth, that would be a red dice roll of 1 or 2 plus a yellow castle. And so that means when anyone rolls the dice, if that combination is achieved and you have it, then you're able to draw a progress card. So, progress cards have a bunch of random actionable items and bonuses, and they're very nice to have. So, being able to collect them is very helpful. And so the more you upgrade your cities, your city improvement levels, the higher the chances that you collect a progress card on a given dice roll. So that is the first benefit to upgrading. The number 2 or second benefit to upgrading your city calendar is the passive bonuses of the city calendar. So basically, when you upgrade to a level 3 city improvement in any of the 3 areas, it unlocks this passive bonus that can help you throughout the rest of your gameplay. So each one has its own unique passive bonus, so you kind of want to pay attention to what each of them does and which one you think is the most useful or beneficial for your gameplay. So number 1, if you upgrade your trade to level 3 in the city calendar improvement, then you unlock you can trade commodities at a 2-to-1 rate. And what that means is, now if you have 2 commodities of one kind, like 2 coin, you can trade 2 of those in for any 1 commodity or 1 resource of your choice for the rest of the game. And so essentially this acts as a port or a harbor. Instead of having to build on a harbor or port at the edge of the game board, you just unlock one using your city calendar, and so for the rest of the game you have a commodity harbor. Then, if you upgrade to level 3 in politics, which is the blue, you are now able to upgrade your knights to level 3, which are called mighty knights. have a level 3 politics city calendar improvement. And then finally, if you upgrade to level 3 in science on your city calendar, then that allows you to pick up any one resource of your choice on any dice roll that you do not ordinarily collect on. So what I mean by that is, if one of the players rolls an 11 and you don't have any cities or settlements built on a tile that collects on 11, rather than missing out on resource collection on this turn, you actually get to pick any one resource of your choice from the bank. And this is limited to resources only, not commodities, but it is still very powerful. One of the exceptions to this rule is for 7. If a 7 is rolled, then you do not get to collect everyone. It's the same as 7s in base game of Catan, but just know if a 7 is rolled, you do not get to use your passive science bonus. And the same is true for the robber. If an 11 is rolled and the 11 is next to you ordinarily but is being blocked by the robber, you do not get to collect. So yeah, those are the 3 passive bonuses, and after covering those, that brings us to our third benefit of upgrading your city calendar, which are the metropolis seas. I'm gonna be honest, I don't know how to say the plural of metropolis, so think metropolis, but many. I'm going to alternate between saying metropolis seas, metropoli, and metropolis. I don't know. But basically, if you upgrade to level 4 in any of the areas on your city calendar, this now grants you a metropolis. A metropolis is a small wooden yellow piece that comes with the Cities and Knights expansion, and it is worth 2 victory points, so it is very valuable. And you get to put this metropolis over any of the cities you own on the board, and that is very helpful in certain aspects of the game, because if you have a metropolis placed over your city, that city is now protected from barbarian attacks. I haven't explained the barbarian attacks quite yet, so yeah, just pocket that, keep that in mind for later, and I will get back to it. But that is a benefit. And then another key aspect to these metropolises is that they can be stolen from other players. So, as I said, you can get the metropolis by improving your city calendar to level 4, but that is not the maximum level. So, if someone reaches a level 5 city improvement in an area before the person who owns the metropolis, then they can actually steal that metropolis from the other player. So, if my friend has the science metropolis because they got to level 4, and then say I match him at level 4, if I get to level 5 first, then I get to take that metropolis from him. And the greatest benefit of having a maxed out city calendar improvement in one of the areas is once you get to level 5, there's no higher levels. So if you have a level 5 city improvement, no one can steal the metropolis back from you. You have claimed it for the rest of the game. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. Sometimes you get excited because you're the first one to level 4, you get that metropolis, you have that 2-point lead over everyone, but then you have to still pay attention to who is trying to creep up on you and take it, because they might actually be able to steal that, and that would be a 4-point swing. So those are all the new things that the city calendar brings, just in terms of benefits. But let's actually take a look at the recipes listed on all the folds of the city calendar. So these are the craftable items in Catan Cities and Knights. First up, just to get it out of the way, one of the things listed on the city calendar is the ship. I believe it's 1 sheep and 1 wood, unless you have the other Catan expansion pack, which is Seafarers. I think the Seafarers expansion, you don't actually get to use this. There's no ships in this game, but this expansion is like compatible with other expansions. So that's one that if you only have the Cities and Knights expansion, you will not be using the ship recipe. So after that, we have a couple things that remain the exact same from the base game, and that would be roads, settlements, and cities. Roads in the base game of Catan, they cost 1 brick and 1 wood. That is the same. Settlements, they cost 1 wood, 1 brick, 1 wool, and 1 grain. That remains the same. Cities cost 2 grain and 3 ore. That is the same. Now, there are a couple new craftable items that are brought into this game by the expansion pack. One of them is the city wall. You'll find it in a small baggie in the game for each player. It looks like a square tile. It's kind of thin, and this is the city wall. Basically, in order to craft it, you need 2 brick, and what it does is it allows you to increase your maximum hand size for when the robber strikes one of your hexes. So, for each city wall that you build and place under one of your cities, you get to increase your maximum hand size by 2. So, if I build 1 city wall, then now I can have 9 cards in my hand when the robber attacks. And one of the limitations is you only get 3 city walls. So that means you have a maximum of, 6 plus 5, 15. Oh, sorry, 7. 7 is the regular. 13. 13 is the maximum hand size you can get. But 13 is a lot more than 7. So, yeah, it's definitely nice if you are late in the game, because sometimes you want to craft things like if you want a level 5 city improvement, that's going to cost you 5 cards, and if you want a city, that's going to cost you 5 cards. And if you're trying to build both things, then look, all of a sudden you're going to have 8, 9, 10 cards in your hands. So city walls can be pretty nice. One other limitation to the city wall is they can only be placed under cities. So you cannot build a city wall if you have no other new cities to place it under. So that's something to keep in mind. Okay, and then after that, that brings us to the next namesake of the expansion, which is the Knights. So Knights are another new item that are introduced by the expansion pack, and they can be bought and promoted for 1 wool and 1 ore. You'll see it on the rightmost fold of the city calendar. And then they also require 1 wheat if you want to activate a knight. So once you have placed a knight, then you activate it. Knights can be used in a variety of ways. They're placed on the intersections of tiles, similar to how your settlements in cities are, and they need to be connected to your roads. But the only difference about a knight is you can move them. So there are plenty of uses for a knight. One way that you can use a knight is to save a spot on the board that you want to build on in the future. So say you're expanding outwards with your roads and you get to a point that you want to make sure that you are going to be the only one who can place on that intersection. But say you don't have all the resources in your hand to try and build immediately. What you can do instead is place a knight at the end of your road, and that acts as a placeholder. So that spot cannot be built on by someone else. Even if someone else built their road all the way over, they can't build their settlement or city now because you have a knight in the way. Another way that a knight can be used is to interrupt an opponent's road. So if you build your road up to an intersection of someone else's 2 roads, so say like, how do I diagram this? Say this is the intersection, and you come up from the bottom, but your opponent has roads here and here. If you place a knight in the middle of their road, they can no longer build past your knight. So that can be good in harming your opponents, in limiting their expansion powers. And yeah, another way that you can use the knight is is to chase away the robber. So basically, once you have an active knight, if the robber is next to a tile that is adjacent to your knight, then you can use your knight and deactivate it and move the robber to any other hex on the board. So it's a good way to move the robber and resume your resource collection if you have a knight in the area. So it's pretty cool. And then the other way that you can use knights is to displace other knights. So this is like, player on player combat. Basically, if someone else has a knight that's on a spot that's like harmful for you or interfering with your plans, like maybe they're blocking your road or maybe they're protecting a spot that you want to build on, then what you can do is displace them by building a stronger knight. So as I mentioned before, there are 3 levels of knights. There is the level 1 basic knight, the level 2 strong knight, and the level 3 mighty knight. If someone has like a level 1 knight on your road, by building a level 2 knight, activating it, and then displacing the other person's knight, you can kick them out of that spot. And then if you have a knight that is displaced, it must be moved to a different open intersection on the same stretch of road that it was previously on. So knights can't jump between the board. They have to stay local to whatever segment of road you build them on. Now if you connect all of your settlements via roads, then they can travel anywhere on that single stretch of road, but they cannot just jump to another part of the map that is not connected by roads. So where this is important is if you have a knight that gets displaced, but it doesn't have another legal landing position on that same stretch of road, then this knight dies and has to be taken off the board completely. If it does have another valid spot that it can go to, you can just move your knight there, and that's where it stays instead. And then, as I mentioned, you can pay 1 grain to activate your knight on a turn. There are a couple things that deactivates your knights. That would be moving your knights. So if you have a spot that you're saving and you finally have enough resources to build your settlement, then you have to move your knight away, and that is going to cost one grain. Or it costs 1 grain to activate it. Once you move it, then it is now deactivated. Another thing that causes it to lose its activation status is chasing away the robbers. Then you'll have to pay another grain afterwards. And then one of the mechanics about the knight is after you activate a knight, you cannot use it on the same turn. So what I mean by that is if I build a knight and I activate it, I can't in the same turn chase away the robber. I have to wait 1 cycle before I can use it. But vice versa is allowed. I can use my knight on a given turn, and then I can activate it at the end of my turn, so that by the next turn it is active and ready for me to use. Now, the last usage of the knights is to count up their knight strength, because that is used during the attack of the barbarians. So, as I mentioned before, Catan Cities and Knights also introduces a new 3rd type of die during your roll, which is called the event die. And I mentioned that 3 of the sides of the 6-sided die are related to progress card collection, because they have 3 colors of Metropolis: the blue, the yellow, and the green. But the other 3 sides of this die are a black pirate ship, and this is representative of the barbarians. So, basically, with the expansion pack, you get this new mini board and a black pirate ship, and this represents the barbarians and their progress. So they start at the top of this map, and then on every turn that a black pirate ship is rolled, the barbarians move 1 space settlers of Catan, there's actually a way to defend against the barbarian. So you can keep track of how they're progressing and, make a play to try and protect Catan from the attack. And so, in order to protect Catan, what you do is you count the knight strength on the board, and that is calculated by adding up the total number of knight points of all the active knights on the board. And so basically, as I mentioned before, each player has knights that they can build, and there are 3 levels of knights. There's the basic knight, the strong knight, and the mighty knight. One benefit of having a stronger knight is that you can displace other people's weaker knights. The other benefit is that a stronger knight is worth more knight points. The basic knight is worth 1 point, the strong knight is worth 2 points, and the mighty knight is worth 3 points. So, if I have 2 level 3 knights, 2 mighty knights on the board, that is 6 points that I am contributing towards the barbarian attack, to protect against the barbarian attack. Now the only thing is, these have to be activated knights. If I have 2 inactive level 3 knights, then I'm contributing 0 points against the attack. So, once you calculate the strength of the knights and use the strength of the barbarians, then they have a battle. And basically, if the knight points is equal to or greater than the strength of the barbarians, then the settlers of Catan wins, and you successfully defended Catan. So what that means is, you take a look at all the knight points, and you figure out who contributed the most knight points in defending Catan, and the player that contributed the highest number of knight points gets this card called Defender of Catan, and it is worth 1 victory point. This is a card that cannot be stolen or taken away, and it stays with the player who contributed the most on that attack of the barbarians. If you defeat the barbarians, but 2 people are equal, or maybe multiple people are equal in the number of knight points that they contributed, then rather than collecting a Defender of Catan card, all the people that are tied for the most amount of knight points contributed will get to draw 1 progress card of their choice from any of the 3 decks. Now, on the other hand, if the barbarian strength is greater than the strength of the knights, then there are some very hefty consequences. In this case, you have to take a look at who contributed the least number of knight points on the board, and that player will have to demote one of their cities into a settlement. And the really bad part about this is, if multiple people contributed this least amount, like they were tied for the least amount of points contributed, all of them have to lose one of their cities and replace it with a settlement. So that is a huge setback. So you always want to keep track of where the barbarians are and make sure that you are not, number 1, if you're protected from the attack, if you guys have enough total knight points activated to beat the barbarians, and if you don't, you're going to want to make sure that you are not in last place in terms of contribution, because if you're in last place, you're in a world of trouble. Now, a couple points to keep track of is cities that have a metropolis on them are protected from barbarians' attacks, so they cannot be demoted. If you have 1 city and it has a metropolis and you have no knights, then you're still safe. Nothing will happen to you. City walls that are built under cities that you choose to get destroyed in the barbarian attack, they have to be thrown out with their city, because city walls can only exist under cities and not settlements. So when the barbarians attack, you do get to choose which one of your cities you're going to get rid of. But if that city has a city wall under it, you also have to get rid of the city wall. Now, after the barbarians attack, all the knights on the board become deactivated, and the barbarian ship returns to the top of its mini-map. So they're going to attack like multiple times over the course of a game. And then, if the barbarians destroyed your last city, you are still allowed to keep your city improvements on the city calendar that you upgraded, and you're still allowed to play any development cards that you had acquired in your hand. However, you are not allowed to build any additional city improvements until you have at least one city again. So, those are some of the biggest changes to the game. And another part that I would like to focus or highlight is the progress cards that I was mentioning before. So in the base game of Catan, you have the development card, and there are only 4 kinds of development card. There's Victory Point, Knight, and I guess a couple resource ones. Maybe 4 or 3, I don't really remember. But in Catan Cities and Knights, there are 25 different types of progress cards, which is game-changing. So as I mentioned, there are 3 different decks. One is the trade deck, one is the science deck, one is the politics deck. Each of these decks have 18 progress cards in them. And if you want a quick overview on what each of these does, they're very interesting. They make the game a lot of fun. So we'll start off with the science cards. There are 2 alchemist cards in the science deck. The alchemist is the only progress card you can play before you roll the dice. It allows you to choose the results of both production die. So the number dice before you roll, you can play this card, and you can choose what you want the number to be. Then you roll the event die as normal. You also can choose to make the event. You can also choose to have it be a 7. Like maybe you're being mean, you realize that everyone else has like a bunch of cards and you are doing fine because you have a couple city walls. You can use the alchemist to make the number a 7 and make everyone throw away half their hand. That is something you can do. Then there are 2 science cards that are called the crane, and this allows you to build a city improvement for 1 commodity less than normal. So if you have a level 2 city and you want to improve to level 3, instead of needing 3 commodity cards, you'll only need 2. Then there's 1 engineer card in the science deck, and this one allows you to build 1 city wall for free. It's alright. Then there are 2 inventor cards. This allows you to switch 2 number tokens on the board, but you're not allowed to switch to 12, 6, or 8. So the best ones and the worst ones cannot be swapped. Any of the other ones are fair game. This one is huge. If you get this early in the game, it can really impact it, because maybe your initial placement isn't the most productive. Maybe you place next to a 3 and 3 is not being rolled. If you get the inventor card, you can swap out that 3 for a 9 and benefit yourself, but also totally screw over someone else. It's definitely a lot of fun. Then there are 2 irrigation cards in the science deck. This allows you to collect 2 grain cards for each field's hex that you're adjacent to. Collect 2 grain cards for each field's hex adjacent to at least one of your settlements or cities. You receive 2 grain cards for each field's hex next to any of your... What? You have... Okay. So basically, if you have 2 things on 1 hex, like, say I build on the same hex twice, I still only collect 2 from that one. But if I touch 2 different field hexes and I play irrigation, then I will get 4 grain cards. Then there is 2 medicine cards in the science deck. This allows you to upgrade from a settlement to a city for only 2 ore and 1 grain. So it reduces the price by 1 ore and 1 grain. It's pretty nice. Then there are 2 mining cards. This allows you to collect 2 ore cards for every mountain hex that you're adjacent to. So it's like irrigation, but with stone, with the mountain hex. Then there is 1 printer card in the science deck. This allows you, it just gives you a victory point. This is one that you just keep face up all the other development cards, once you use them and you play them, they go back to the bottom of the deck that you drew it from. But the victory point one stays with you and it stays face up as soon as you get it. Then you have the road building card. This carries over from the base game of Catan. There are 2 of these in the science deck. It allows you to build 2 roads for free. And finally, you have the Smith card. There are 2 Smith cards that allow you to promote 2 of your knights 1 level each for free. But the caveat with this is you may not promote a mighty knight, and you may promote a knight regardless of whether it is active or inactive. But you may only promote a strong knight to a level 3 knight, a mighty knight, if you have the level 3 city improvement in politics. You can't get to a level 3 knight without having that first, using the Smith card. So that is all of the science progress cards. After that, let's jump into the politics progress cards. So first up, we have the bishop. There are 2 bishop cards in the politics deck. The first one allows you to move the robber following the normal rules. Draw 1 random resource or commodity card from each player who has a settlement or city next to the robber's new hex. So usually when you move the robber, you have to pick 1 person that is, next to that hex to steal from. If you use the bishop card, you get to steal from every player that is next to that hex. Then there is the Constitution card. There is 1 of them in the politics deck, and that is a victory point. Then there are 2 deserter cards in the politics deck. This allows you to choose 1 opponent, and they must remove 1 knight of their choice from the board. Now, you may then place 1 of your own knights on the board, and its strength must equal the knight removed. So, maybe one of your opponents has a level 2 knight and a level 3 knight on the board. If you play the deserter card, they get to pick between their 2 that they want to get rid of. Obviously, they're going to get rid of the level 2 knight, and then you now get to place a level 2 knight on the board for free. So it's a pretty powerful card. Then there are 2 diplomat cards in the politics deck, and this allows you to remove an open road, which is a road without another piece on the end of it. And it can be anyone's road, any of your opponents, or if you use the diplomat card to remove one of your own roads, you are able to then place that road somewhere else if you'd like. So it's an interesting card. Then you have 2 intrigue cards in the politics deck. This allows you to displace an opponent's knight. The knight must be on an intersection connected to at least one of your roads or shipping routes. So you can displace someone else's knight without having a stronger knight or any knight at all, and it is pretty good for if someone is blocking you. Then you have 2 saboteur cards. When you play this card, each player who has as many or more victory points than you must discard half rounded down of their cards to the bank. This is resource and commodity cards. So this one is interesting because it only targets players that are ahead of you or at the same point as you. If there's someone who has less victory points than you, they do not get affected. But it's basically like a robber. You force everyone to get rid of half of their hand. Then there are 3 spy cards in the politics deck. This is a very interesting card. It allows you to look at another player's hand of progress cards. Then, after looking at their hand, you may choose to steal one of them and add one of those progress cards to your hand. This is the only way in the game that you can acquire someone else's progress cards, because you're not supposed to trade them. And, you can't trade them, so this is the only way that you can get someone else's. And the cool thing about the spy card is if you take someone else's hand and they have a spy card as well, you can steal their spy and then just steal another hand, or maybe even steal another card from that same person. So that is pretty cool. Then the next card in the politics deck is the warlord card. There are 2 of these, and it allows you to activate all of your last card in the politics deck is the wedding card. There are 2 wedding cards, and it says each of your opponents who has more victory points than you must give you 2 resource or commodity cards of their choice. So you can get up to a maximum of 6 cards from the people ahead of you. Then, lastly, you have the trade cards. This is the yellow deck of progress cards. In this, there are 2 commercial harbor cards. This allows you to force each of the other players to make a special trade with you. You may offer each opponent any 1 resource card from your hand, and they must exchange it for any 1 commodity of their choice, if they have one. So, I can play the commercial harbor, and then with every player, if they have a commodity, they must give me a commodity, and I must give them a resource. But the thing is, it is up to them which they want to get rid of, and it is up to me which I want to get rid of. And if someone has no commodities, then you don't get to steal from them. Then there are 2 Master Merchant cards. This allows you to choose another player who has more victory points than you, and you get to look at the player's hand of resource and commodity cards, and then you get to choose 2 and add it to your hand. So this one is pretty cool. You get to take an entire person's hand, look through all of their resources and commodities, and take 2. And that's it. Then there are 6 merchant cards. I mentioned way at the beginning of the video that there's a new piece that this game adds, that this expansion adds to the game. It's this like purple wizard cap looking thing, and that is the merchant. So basically, if you draw this card, you place the merchant on any land hex next to one of your settlements or cities, and then whatever hex you placed it on, you may exchange the resources produced by it with the supply at a 2-to-1 rate, as long as the merchant remains on that hex. So, if I get the merchant card and I play it, and I put the merchant on ore, like one of the ore things that I'm next to, now I can trade ore at a 2-to-1 rate as long as the merchant does not get moved. Then there are 2 merchant fleet cards that are in the trade deck. This allows you may use 1 resource or commodity of your choice to make any number of 2-to-1 trades with the supply during the turn that you play this card. So it's like having a merchant for 1 turn, or it's like having a harbor for 1 turn. You play it, and for the rest of that turn, you're able to trade at a 2-to-1 rate any 1 resource or commodity. Then there are 4 resource monopoly cards. This allows you to name a resource, and then every player in the game must give you 2 of that type of resource if they have them. And once again, this only applies to resources, the original 5 from the base game of Catan. So if I say I want ore, then everyone must give me all the ore they have up to 2. If they only have 1 ore, then they only give me 1, and if they don't have any ore, they don't give me anything. And then finally, the last type of progress card in the trade deck is the trade monopoly card. There are 2 of this card, and this allows you to name a commodity. And after naming a commodity, each player must give you 1 commodity of that type as long as they have it. So you can gain a maximum of 3 commodities on a turn like that. And say like paper. If everyone has 1 paper, then you gain 3 paper. So that is all of the different kinds of progress cards that are added into this game. And as you can see, there's a huge variety. Some of them are like pretty crazy. I really like the inventor card because, I don't know, to me, swapping 2 number tokens is like, it changes the game a lot in my opinion. So, what else was there? Another rule about the progress cards is you're only allowed to have a maximum of 4 progress cards in your hand at any time. So if you ever get to the point where you are now holding 5 progress cards, you have to take a look at the 5 and discard 1 to the bottom of the deck, because Cities and Knights changes the initial placement strategy of the game. So, in the base game of Catan, if you are placing your initial settlements, you get 2 settlements to place and 2 roads, and it goes in a straight snake draft. So the person that rolls the highest number gets to place first. Then it goes like player 2, player 3, player 4, and then player 4, player 4, player 4, player 3, player 2, player 1 in a snake draft. It follows the same snake draft pattern, but you place your settlement first, and then instead of placing a second settlement, you now place a city. So everyone starts off with 3 victory points rather than 2, because you already start on the board with 1 settlement and 1 city, and your city is played to second, which is kind of, you have to keep in mind, like, cities are what allow you to collect commodities, so you want to be mindful of what are good spots for your cities, but also you don't want to let other people take your spots. So it becomes pretty interesting in the placement early part of the game, and your initial collecting, the resources that you collect at the beginning of the game, it's only whatever your city touches at the start. So your initial settlement that you place, you don't collect anything for that, and if your city is touching anything that would ordinarily produce a commodity, you don't collect that either. It's just whatever 2 or 1 or 3 things that your city is touching at the beginning of the game that you get to collect for free before you even roll. And so, now that you know all of the rules, I should tell you the goal of the game. The goal of the game is slightly adjusted. In the base game of Catan, you have to get to 10 victory points in order to win. In Catan Cities and Knights, it is now 13 points. Now, I will warn you, if you've never played this expansion pack, this very easily doubles and possibly triples the length of your Catan games. The average Catan game when you're first starting off is probably like at least an hour and a half. Then if you get better or you just play it faster, it can be less. It can be an hour. Supposedly it can be as fast as under an hour, but I have never achieved that with my friends. But Catan Cities and Knights is like a 2.5 hour minimum investment. I think maybe I've played it once where it took 2 hours. I don't think it's ever taken less than 2 hours, and it can take 3 hours or more, especially in your first very few games, because there are going to be a lot of misplays. It just expands what you can do by so much that it makes you have to think a lot longer, so your turns take longer. There are more decisions. There's a lot more sabotage that can happen, so points go like back and forth a little more. But yeah, it takes a bit longer. And yeah, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I have a couple basic tips and tricks for you guys if you are interested in playing Catan Cities and Knights. This information comes to me from a little bit of experience playing the game, because I've played it probably like at least 10 times over by now. But I also did watch a couple strategy videos because I wanted to get an edge over my friends while we were playing this game. So number 1, my first tip would be to build and activate a knight before the first barbarian attack. Obviously this seems intuitive. If the barbarians are coming close, you're going to want to make sure that you have some knight points on the board to defend against that. But the first one is really important because it is significantly harder to win the game if you get demoted. That has been like proved by people who did studies or something like that. I believe it, because it sets you back. You have to spend your resources to get to a city. Losing a city is pretty big because it cuts off your commodity collection. So you don't ever want to be a player that loses a city. So while all of them are important to keep track of, definitely the first barbarian attack is the one you want to watch out for the most, because early in the game, that'll set you back huge. So make sure you build and activate a knight before the first barbarian attack if you can. Then, number 2, I would recommend that you keep track of commodity collection by all of the players during the game. has their city calendars on the table and visible to one another, so you can just glance over and make sure what page of the city improvement every person is on, because that'll give you an idea of who is going for what kind of metropolis. So if all of your opponents are going after the science metropolis, then it might be a good idea to go after cloth metropolis, because you're gonna go for it uncontested, and that's a free 2 victory points. I mean, free, but you're at less of a risk of not being the first one to get it. And then another very important one is, obviously knights are very important in this game because they allow you to defend spots that you want to get to. They allow you to defend against the robber. You need some sort of representation for when the barbarians come to attack. So having active knights is important, but I would recommend having 2 level 1 knights on the board before having your first level 2 knight. Each player has 2 level 1 knights, 2 level 2 knights, and 2 level 3 knights, so you can build a total of 6 knights. And yes, theoretically, if you have a level 2 knight, it is more advantageous than 2 level 1 knights because it only costs 1 grain to activate it, whereas if you have 2 level 1 knights, it costs 2 grains to keep that active. But if you have a level 2 knight and no other knights, and then another player plays the deserter card on you where they get to remove one of the knights of your choice, then you have to give up your best knight. You don't have a weaker knight to give up. So then you're left with no knights at all. So I would recommend playing 2 level 1 knights before your first level 2 knight. Okay, and then one of the next tips that I have for you is to build on favorable pairs. So if you take a look at the city calendar or even the building block card from the base game of Catan, you'll notice that there are a couple of resources that always get played together basically. And these combinations are wood and brick, and then stone or ore and grain. They're always good to have together because you can play them together. Like if you have wheat or grain and wood, you can collect them. Like if you have an 8 on both of them and they come in together, it's nice to have both resources, but there's nothing you can play with just those 2. Whereas getting brick and wood allows you to place a road, and then you can you already have half of your settlement right there. And getting wheat and ore is very helpful if it comes in unison because it allows you to build your cities very quickly. So doubling up on numbers that give you good pairs of resources is pretty nice. So if there's a way to build up on the same number of brick and wood, that way every time that you roll that number you get both of those together, that is a good strategy. And then the same goes for stone or ore and grain. And finally, science. There are 3 decks of progress cards. The science one, not only is the passive bonus super crazy redonkulous, I really like the aqueduct. That's the name of the passive bonus that allows you to collect when you don't get a dice roll. But also the science cards are just a lot of fun. The only dud card in my opinion is the free city wall, which honestly isn't the worst either. It's only worth 2 brick. If you don't have any access to brick, then yeah, that can be pretty nice. But some of them are super powerful. So I like pursuing science. I think it has the coolest bonus and has the coolest cards. So it's cool. But politics is pretty helpful if you are behind in the game because there are a lot of cards that specifically target people that are ahead of you, and there's a lot of sabotage oriented cards. So if you are kind of behind in the game and the other players have more victory points than you on the board, then coin politics is a good area of the city calendar to pursue. But yeah, that basically wraps up this video. There are going to be a couple weird cuts here and there because I got random phone calls and text messages I had to attend to. I also have to pee kind of badly, so you might notice that I'm a little restless towards the end part of this video. But yeah, thanks for watching if you made it this far. Sorry for that break that I had to take. Initially, it was just for that interview that I had, which went alright. I haven't heard back from them. To be honest, I don't think I'm getting that position, but it is what it is. It was a good learning experience. I haven't got to sit in many, like, real interviews with people. It's all like digital interview software these days where you just talk into the camera and answer a question and there's no person on the other end, which is very awkward, but I enjoyed it, being able to talk to a real human. It was cool. And yeah, after I had that, then my club, I'm part of this stand-up comedy club on my school's campus, and we had our like biggest event of the year that was coming up, and that just happened this past Saturday. So rather than jumping back into these videos, I took another week to help promote and do everything I need to do for that event. But now that it's behind us, I can get back to this. So thank you for your patience, and I hope that you guys were able to hang in there over the break. But yeah, thanks for watching. If you like content like this, feel free to like, comment, or subscribe. I'll be making more videos as the week progresses. And yeah, thanks, and I'll see you next time.